Misrak Wazanyele offers high-energy but patient help to hundreds of residents here in the town of Chifra. This UN-run registration drive, part of an unprecedented program to help millions of Ethiopians across this region, called AFAR, regain access to food assistance.
When they come here, they know that their names are here, and they know how they are selected. We have the agreed inclusion and exclusion criteria, so they know that on which criteria they are also included.
So anyone coming here knows that they will be eligible?
Exactly.
Okay.
Large parts of Ethiopia have long relied on food assistance, and it was often weaponized by warring parties in the civil conflict that raged across the Tigray and Afar regions. Fighting over the past 3 years was often fierce, and access to food for millions of civilians almost always difficult. The war remained largely hidden from the outside world. Ethiopian authorities hindered aid organizations and prevented journalists from entering Tigray without military escorts. With a death toll estimated at 500,000, some have been granted formal rest, but so many more left unmourned in unmarked graves. American sanctions on the country during the conflict, including visa bans and asset freezes, provoked condemnation from ordinary Ethiopians. In the second half of last year, after the war was over, American-funded food assistance to the north of Ethiopia was placed on pause after some supply stores were plundered in the nearby province of Tigray, the center of brutal fighting that began in 2020. The US has now allowed assistance to resume, but insists food should only be shared with identified individuals. So the World Food Programme has raced to register all those with the right to receive this support. For desperate recipients, patience remains a prerequisite, with long paper lists checked by hand. A crumpled tarp, a backdrop for ID photos that qualify candidates for a card and QR code, their possible passport out of food poverty. But explaining all of this to confused local populations has not been easy.
When they ask, why are you doing this, how do you explain it?
We explain them that this is the measure that we are taking to assure that the right beneficiaries are receiving the right entitlement in the right amount at the right place.
The waiting today may not last much longer than a few minutes, but it's been months since these men, women and children have received the food aid many need. War widow Fatuma Zahara Hassan is among those Misrak and his team are helping register. No smile for the camera, she sets off on the hot walk home, where her 6 children are waiting, and her smile returns, but only briefly. Fatuma's husband was not a soldier, but was still killed in the conflict that engulfed northern Ethiopia 2 years ago.
I swear that losing him was hard. Life is even harder now. I have no place to call home. But I think losing your means to live is more difficult than losing a loved one.
Since his death, she's struggled to feed the family. A piece of local bread with tomato sauce shared among 7 mouths, the day's only meal.
Losing a father is difficult. They are suffering. We are poor and don't have many opportunities in this area. I do what I can, but you can see they don't look at all comfortable. I am a woman, all alone, and I am struggling all alone.
The fighting ceased a year ago, but for Fatuma, returning to her ramshackle street and a looted home she could no longer afford to rent also meant an end to the food aid she'd received at a camp for those the war had displaced. Hoping to feed her hungry children now, somehow, she says, she started selling coffee that she buys nearby, often on credit, before roasting it in a traditional technique. She earns around $1 a day serving customers on her front step. Free food support for her cannot come soon enough.
I need assistance. I live in an empty house with nothing to my name, not even a single chicken.
But despite a ceasefire in Afar, food shortages remain severe. And so, in this drought-affected desert region, the US decision to stop its support for 6 months angered local officials.
This is not a time to suspend the food assistance. That is difficult for us, for everyone. And we are asking repeatedly to resume food assistance.
Maher Ali helps run the Afar region's Disaster Risk Management Commission and is concerned a suspension lasting any longer could kill more here.
There is no recovery and rehabilitation. If it's continue like this, it will be, the death will be happen. The food security situation will be in dire situation.
To stave off disaster, some UN assistance has continued for Afar's very vulnerable, breastfeeding mothers and their babies. Those confronting malnutrition are measured and weighed. Those found at risk receive small packets of a peanut-based supplement. In these remote Afari villages, the worries of the war stay visible on faces of women like Merim Ali Mohammed, a 32-year-old with 5 underfed children. Right now, only her youngest, Awal, benefits from food assistance.
After the war, the price of commodities was very high. And the money we had left wasn't enough to afford the things we needed.
Most of her household items and livestock were lost or stolen when she fled her home. Even cooking what little food she can find is difficult without her old dishes.
We know how to prepare the food, we know how to do it, but we're not getting the food. All the time, the kids are not getting what they need.
That should soon change for many families in Afar, after the Biden administration announced the UN World Food Programme it helps fund could finally resume wider operations this month.
The feeding effort in Ethiopia is among the largest in the world, and it's truly global in nature, with wheat flour from the US, with rice from South Korea. This warehouse currently contains around 4,000 tons, and it's only half full. There are 3 others just like it in a single location, serving a part of the country where the population's ability to feed itself has, in recent years, been devastated by conflict.
Once fully loaded, food trucks like this fan out across the country in these long convoys. It's a complex supply chain challenge in a region that's still reeling from the ravages of war. The impact's felt especially in Ethiopia's refugee populations, who have fled here from neighbouring countries. In camps like this one, called Boralwe, residents did see their food support resume, slightly earlier than elsewhere. But for Mohammed Hassan Mohammed, a refugee from nearby Eritrea, who's lived here since his teens, the recently restarted food aid couldn't come fast enough.
In these 2 months, we received food support twice in a row. We thank God. They gave us food quickly. But in the past 6 months, we've suffered a lot.
His 2 young children, Habib and Fatuma, always had enough to eat during America's support suspension, he says. But other families were not so lucky.
I saw many children die. In Afar, when children died, they said it was with the permission of God, and they wouldn't accept that they had died due to hunger. I don't want to say this publicly, but there were deaths.
After months without enough to eat, telltale indications of malnutrition, like light-coloured hair, now far too often visible. A reminder that, despite the smiles, survival here still frequently relies on outside support. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Willem Marks in Afar, Ethiopia.